Good afternoon and welcome. You're listening live to Heart-to-Heart, a program which aims to help you understand and to become your loving self at KMET 1490 AM ABC News Radio live. I'm Dr. Mitra Rashidian. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified sexologist in private practice located in beautiful Encino, California. And here's my wonderful, amazing best friend, colleague, Dr. Robert Jaffe.
Hello, I'm Dr. Robert Jaffe, also a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified hypnotherapist. Here to welcome you. We're here, Dr. Rashidian and I, to share with you some of what we've learned over many, many years of study and practice, the goal of which is to feel more loving and more joyful every single day of our lives. We always dedicate this program to you, our listeners, and we are here to let you know that you actually do contain within you everything you need to feel happy, joyous, and free. We are born into this world as our loving, authentic, true selves, and some of the qualities that we come in with are we are open, we are curious. We are, when we're born, honest. We are also
born.
when we're born, we're honest. We're here. We are also born sexual, and we are also born trusting. And when we come in, we also have the capacity to become emotionally available and connected with others, as well as confident and compassionate.
Amazing God-given qualities, that authentic true self of ours, which is the root of us. This is who we are. We are all that, the authentic true self. And we talk on Thursdays, we talk about sex, sexuality, and anything in between, right? And not in the circle. So anything about has to do with human sexuality and sexual healthcare. So as part of that is how we human being, we take that authentic true self in our beginning stages of forming a relationship, which is called dating.
Dating.
Okay. Right? And, this is pandemic time. I never thought in my life that we're going to face a situation like this where we end up having online dating, online chatting about ourselves, online connection, online getting to know each other, online everything except of course online you can have sex. Yes, you can have sex, but separately.
It's different.
It's different.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So however, before you get to all of that, right, we need to start getting to know each other, right?
Indeed.
We go through what is called the process of dating. And not necessarily related to COVID-19, but in general, what I hear from my clients or from friends, family members, those who are either in relationship or they are single or they're going back to other relationships after divorce or after separation. Overall, they're not really reporting being happy about dating. Some, of course, they are, and some they aren't. So the focus today is on those people who are actually not happy about their dating situation, or they believe they're not able to find the right date, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some of the complaints that I hear is that when we met at the beginning, everything was so beautiful, everything was so romantic, and then eventually we started to get into an argument, and now we're fighting. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So look at the sequence. Or they say, well, at the beginning, everything was fine, everything was nice, everything was romantic, and then he or she started to change my ideas, started to turn me into what she is, into what he is. And, it was as I felt as though I'm no longer being seen as me and I'm supposed to be somebody else. Right? Or the other things, I hear is that when we want to spend money, he's so tight, or she's so tight, or he's so controlling about every penny, or she's controlling about every penny, right? So, and then we're wondering, what's going on? Because the next time these people, after a few dates, when they want to go to the next one, they say, oh, dating is so hard, dating is so difficult, all men are the same, all women are the same, right?
And of course, that's true.
Is it?
Well, yeah, physiologically.
I don't believe even in that.
No? Okay.
I mean, the structure may be the same. We all have heart, we all have 2 arms, 2 legs, we all have a vagina and a penis and testicle and breast. And yes, but they not look the same. God forbid if we all look the same.
Well, it's funny when you say that. Because
funny?
Actually.
Well, you're supposed to have all of that, right?
Well, it's interesting because we do look at the differences amongst us, but I think we overlook a lot of times the similarities.
Right.
And I learned that when I was a young child, maybe 9, 10, 11, 12. I used to love science fiction movies. And so when you would watch a science fiction movie, a lot of times you would talk about there would be people from other worlds coming to the Earth, or you would see spaceships landing, flying saucers, and then you would take a look at the people who came down, and they didn't look anything like a human being.
Right.
And so that's what I was saying. It's funny because we think of people from other countries as aliens,
right?
But they're really not aliens. They're really us. They're really part of our world. And they look a lot more like us than somebody from Mars or Venus or Alpha Centauri or another place, because those now there may be people up there who do look like us, but at least there's a possibility that they don't look anything like us, that they could have totally different shapes, totally 3 heads and 5 eyes and tails and everything, and so we look at other people and we do notice the differences, but we don't recognize how much we are all the same, which I think is a lot bigger than the differences.
Absolutely. I remember when I first moved here, I was called an alien.
Yeah.
And it took me a long while to kind of not get, offensive or not get offended or not get, I don't know. I had so many reactions to it. I mean, why am I called an alien? And to me, alien at the time represented somebody from planet Mars.
Yeah, that's
right.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I said, I just came from the other side of the ocean, and I didn't come in here with the boat. I had a first class ticket flying. So what makes me an alien? But then again, it is what it is, and right now, if I'm so used to it that it really doesn't bother me anymore.
Yeah.
However, going back to dating, you're right. I mean, we look at the differences versus similarities. It's like as people have a checklist.
Well, yeah, it's a checklist, and I also think that as you know yourself better, then you know more about what you're looking for. Because I know that certainly when I was young, I'm not young anymore, but
really, you finally admitted that.
Oh yeah, definitely not young anymore. But when I was in my certainly in my 20s and 30s, I would meet women, and pretty much if they looked attractive to me at a physical level, and if they could carry on a decent conversation, I would be interested. And now I'm looking for, when I'm dating, I'm looking for a lot more than that. So I think a lot of it has to do with knowing ourselves.
Right, exactly, right. So, the reason I brought up this topic here because people complain about how to date these days. Well, we know the criteria for dating these days is social, physical distancing for the most part, but it doesn't mean that, we need to stop looking at what really makes a dating pleasant event for us, pleasant situation for us, versus, like you said, looking at the negativity of that, right? Negative things. The reality is that not all men are alike, not all women are alike. We're looking with not physically, they don't look alike. Emotionally, attitude, personality, they're not all the same. Social status are not the same. Wants and desires are not the same, right?
Correct.
However, the reason we believe that when all men and all women are alike, because the reality is, and like you said, we need to look at ourselves, we keep selecting the same personality type.
Well, yes. Well, it isn't just personality. I think what you're talking about is having a particular attraction to a particular kind of individual.
Right, we can say it that way, of course. Yes.
Yeah.
So we want to know why this happens, right? Why we keep repeating, looking for the same type of, attitudes, the same type of, even physics, the same type of people that at first they feel so amazing, and then suddenly they become not the one, right? And then we continue to repeat the same cycle and then get to the same hurtful result and walk away.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So in short, my theory is, and please feel to agree or disagree,
okay,
that, just like you and I are writing a book about subconscious runs the show, right? I think part of our selection is done subconsciously. And that means that as we grow up, we believe certain, fundamental, we form certain fundamental attitudes, we believe certain, we have certain beliefs, we have certain perceptions, which are learned, which have been evolved within us as a result of our upbringing, right? Therefore, for example, and then these are because of how depends on our lifestyle, basically. Right, so we just told that we have 30 seconds to our commercial, and therefore let's just hold on to that thought, and then after commercial break, we're gonna, discuss this, how we are ending up selecting the same type of people as our date, and then we end up not liking them.
And also to talk a little bit maybe about what the subconscious is.
What the subconscious is, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll see you back shortly.
Okay.
Thank you. Welcome back from our commercial break. This is Heart-to-Heart program at KMET 1490 AM, ABC News Radio. For those of you just tuning in, our discussion for this segment is about dating and how to have a joyful dating. Please call us, share your question with us at 951-922-3532. That's 951-922-3532. Also visit us at our YouTube at heart-2-heart.online/YouTube. And please share this program with those that you believe they can benefit from it. But I also, want to encourage you again to please join us, ask your questions, because this way we can offer you a program that you really want to listen to and to share and to enjoy. So our phone number again is 951-922-3532. So Dr. Robert.
Yes.
We talked about how we subconsciously select our mate.
Right.
And then you suggested let's talk more about what subconscious is, and you're the master on that.
Well, so the subconscious is you can visualize it as an iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
So we all know that icebergs float above water, and usually they float above water. You can see probably around 15% of what the iceberg is. The rest of the iceberg is underwater. And so if you go right underwater, down maybe 100 feet or so, then you have the subconscious. That's what the subconscious is. Now, if you go down even deeper than 100 feet, you have the unconscious. And the unconscious is if you say to someone something and it resonates with them, they weren't thinking about it, or they were semi-aware of it, but you say it and they go, oh yeah, that's right. That was in your subconscious. But you may say something to someone and it may be true about what you're saying to them, but they're not even aware of it. That's the unconscious. So there's
Right.
three parts to the mind. Now, we're going to talk a lot about the subconscious because the unconscious is something that's hard to talk about because people are just unaware of what's in it. But the subconscious stores all of our experiences and the conclusions that we come up to, that we make about why things happen the way they happen. So when we're little and we see let's say if we're raised by both mom and dad or a mother and father figure, we see that the father is acting a particular way with his friends. We see that the father is acting a particular way towards us and the other kids, and we see that the father is acting a particular way towards the mother. The father doesn't have to say, I want you to see how I'm behaving and copy it. What we do is we just see it and we take it in.
Mm-hmm.
And we take it in at a subconscious level. And so we learn basically a lot from watching them and from seeing how they interact. And that's both positive and negative. And we take that in and we store it. And then later on, it comes back up in the form of our own belief systems and our own behaviors. So so that's what the subconscious does. And if we are having behaviors or making decisions or picking the same kind of people that don't work out, it's important to understand what's actually happening in the subconscious to bring it up, to make it to be that 15% that's above the water. So once we can see it, then we can make different decisions and make changes. But as long as we're semi-aware of it, then it sort of runs us.
Exactly, and that's such a beautiful explanation of how you describe subconscious. The other easier example that I give to people, excuse me, is that you see that when we are in elementary school, we start to learn that multiplication table, right? And it we repeat it so much that it becomes so engraved in our mind that we automatically, without thinking, we say it, right? 5 times 4 is 20. 3 times 6 is 18. We don't even need to think about it, right? It just comes out so naturally, right? So this is another way of explaining how our subconscious becomes, stores information. Which we just say it without even thinking about it. We act on it, we accept it, we trust that 3 times 6 is 18. We don't even think twice about it, right? So this is how our subconscious, collects information. It stays there.
And that and what you give, the example you're giving there has to do with repetition.
Right.
So when things are repeated, and then of course when we're young, the kinds of behaviors we see, plus the words that we're told and the attitudes that we're exposed to, are all done repetitiously by the people around us.
Exactly. I mean, my clients sometimes they tell me, when they were a child, and if they did something, or if they didn't listen or anything, or they heard their parents talking to each other, which they, for example, shouted at each other, say, you're just like your mother, you're just like your brother, you're just like your, I don't know, your father, or you're just like your uncles. So and then that tone of voice, that kind of gesture, that kind of an attitude, when it repeats itself, it becomes engraved in our subconscious.
Correct.
Right. And then depending on where we live and how we live and how we are treated, also shapes our beliefs and attitudes and perceptions. Number one, about ourselves.
Right.
Number two, about the world around us. And then how we interact. Right. So if we see during dating, keep repeating, selecting people that they all hurt me, or they are careless, or they're not committed to relationship, or they're not into me, or whatever, and we're repeating the same cycle one after another, right?
Right.
We need to kind of pause before going to the next date.
And the problem is that I think a lot of people face is the underlying belief is that it's the opposite sex.
Right.
So if we were talking about this before, about a client who's in a relationship with somebody who's cheating on her, and she believes that's what guys do. Guys just cheat. So why would I get rid of this guy, since I want to be with someone, and the next guy will just cheat also? So she also has that belief. So she forces herself to try to not get upset about it.
Right. She forces that not to do that, but then again, she's getting upset about it.
Correct.
Right. So how do we know that what we're doing is not working for us? It's to listen to that uncomfortable part of us, right? Because that uncomfortable part of us is saying something to us. It's saying, this is not the right steps that I am taking towards selecting a date, right? So, and if we listen even more in depth, and if we process that with ourselves, we see that, what we are selecting, and of course, maybe therapy definitely is needed at this stage. I would strongly recommend that. So if you are able to understand that you're uncomfortable, right, and not force yourself into going to the next dating without processing that uncomfortableness, I think that's where a win-win situation may happen.
Right. And so, and then what we now know is that people overlook that discomfort because they have a belief that either I'm too picky, or all men or all women are that way, or what I'm looking for doesn't exist. They have that underlying belief. So the discomfort, we call them red flags. Right. So when you get a red flag with somebody, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the wrong person, but the red flag certainly does mean to slow down.
Red flags means to slow down. Otherwise, we all know, you and I have said that, we're going to end up having a project as a date.
Oh, well, yeah. And those of us who have dated know about projects.
Right.
Yes.
Right. See, I haven't dated that much, and I know that. And you always hold that against me.
No, I don't hold that against you. I don't hold that against you. You keep saying that. Okay.
So, but, I know enough that practices that I have had, and interaction with people, and the stories that I have heard. And so anyway, collectively, I know that if you go to a date, that there are red flags. And it doesn't mean that those red flags are not resolvable.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
It is good to know the red flags so that you can work through them if you really believe in your relationship, right? And not make a project out of it, right? So, but sometimes those red flags are really, really alarming, and they are red flags, and they're not resolvable, but we put up with it. So we have to ask ourselves, what makes me put up with all these red flags?
Exactly.
If I have a person who's getting angry and flips out of nowhere for no reason, what makes me select a person like that all the time?
Right.
What makes me, date somebody who, sexually is not comparable with me?
Right. Right.
What makes me, for example, go to a date where the guy or the lady doesn't want to even pay for their coffee and they expect me to pick up the tab all the time, right? So when these things are repeating, and plus many more, like some people get into a dating situation where, domestic violence happens.
Well,
right?
yeah.
Or sex happens very aggressively, or people are always late, or they don't show up, or
Right.
so there are so many negativity, so many red flags happens in dating situation that, okay, so you have one date and that doesn't go well, all right, you have the second one, similar thing happens. So that you need to stop and say, hey, I'm repeating the same thing. Because the reason I'm saying focus on yourself, because for one thing, we cannot change anybody, right?
And you know what, that probably deserves 10 shows in and of itself,
Right.
Because so many people believe that they can,
right,
and they try to overlook it. And that comes a lot from the subconscious scripts that we have,
right,
where we were children, and we were subject to the way our parents were. We couldn't exchange our parents for someone else, so that if our parents treated us a certain way, we had to put up with it, right? And so now we're dating, and the person doesn't treat us the way we want, and we go, well, I just need to put up with it and try to make the best of it.
Exactly.
And that even goes as far as physical abuse.
Right. Right. And so we know that, and thank you for that explanation. That was, very, very brilliant. And we are not able to change most of red flags. And when I'm saying most, I'm talking about, because some of these red flags are so deeply engraved in our partner that it's impossible to do anything about them. And why would you want to do that? Because if the person doesn't want to look at himself or herself, there is nothing that we can do.
And so I think that's an excellent point. And the caveat, of course, is if the person doesn't want to look at themselves.
Right.
So what does that mean? That means if you see something in that's going on in this dating relationship that you find troubling, and if it's worth it to you to bring it up because you do like the person and you would like to resolve it, your first task is to say your truth without accusation, just as an observation, and try to find out whether this person sees it as something that they think of as something they want to change about themselves. Because if they don't, then you know that, okay, it's something I either have to accept or not accept, and then you have to make that decision.
Right. I mean, what I said, an example that I said at the beginning of the program today was that, so one of the partners accuses the other partner of, for example, they are wrong and they need to change their ideas, they need to change their behavior, they need to change their opinion. So how do we understand that what the partner is telling us is accurate, that I need to take a look at myself? Or when do I know that this person is a complainer and it doesn't matter what you bring to the table, he or she complains anyway?
Right.
Exactly. So it's that but when you see that in your repeatedly this is happening in your different dates, then that's when you need to take a look at yourself. Right. And then with that, you need to actually, my recommendation is to stop dating for a while and then step back and take a look at yourself. What makes me select the same type of people over and over and over again?
Well, but I think it's the same type of people is certainly one way of looking at it, but it may be even more specific than that. It may be that a person, let's say, who has a particular behavior like complaining, for example, or a habit like being late for some, and then to look at that and say, is that really, is it something that I not only can live with, but would want to
Yeah,
live
do I
with?
want to live with?
Yeah, because maybe you can, but that doesn't mean that you want to.
Right.
Now, and a lot of and a lot of people believe that that this is just they have that belief that this is just the way people are, or just this is just the way the opposite sex is, and therefore I can't do any better.
Or
And
same
then,
sex.
or same, yeah, well, if they're
Yeah.
same sex, right?
Yeah.
And if and so therefore if they're getting involved with that person, the belief is, since this is ubiquitous and everybody's going to be doing this, I have to learn to live with it, and I have to make the adjustment. And when you do that, then you're usually not being honest with yourself.
Exactly. So let's see how we can overcome all of this, right? After commercial break, we look forward to see you back here.
Bye-bye.
Talking about Heart-2-Date. This is Dr. Mitra along with Dr. Robert. Our phone number is 951-922-3532. We were talking about, how to overcome problems with dating these days, right? And we talk about the role of subconscious and how we engrave, in our mind what feels, handleable, right? But the reality is, we see that we don't get any success or not so much success when we date, and there is a level of discomfort. There are red flags. So what do you do with it? You put up with it, or you just overcome them, right? Mm-hmm. So the best, of course, is to overcome them, right? But how do we know why the problem begins to begin with, right? So when we grow up, if we are in a loving, comfortable, supportive environment, we learn that, I'm a lovable person. Mm-hmm. We learn that, the world is a safe place, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And I can, freely, comfortably look for what makes me feel the same, mm-hmm. right? How do I get myself self-compassion? How do I, become compassionate person? So that it's really a tool, it's a skill, it's a gift that we have that we can bring into our relationships.
Correct.
Right? Now, let's say if I grow up in a family environment where there is always hostility, mm-hmm. where there is always name calling, where there is blaming, comparing, negativity, so I learned to survive within that environment. Mm-hmm. And I believe that the world outside of me is also a hostile environment, mm-hmm. right? And I kind of develop perceptions and ideas and attitude about how to survive within that environment.
Right.
So therefore, in my relationship, and that's where we say subconscious runs the show, we attract those type of people to ourselves. We kind of become attractive to those people that they have had similar experiences, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And therefore, when we go into the relationship, we see, there are similarities. So at the beginning, everything fits well.
Right.
But after a while, we see that the discomfort also shows itself.
The discomfort, yes.
Right. And we don't listen to the discomfort.
Well, we don't listen to it because
it's familiar.
It's familiar, and it doesn't appear to us to be something that is alien.
Yeah,
it's something that we know, and we talked a few minutes ago about beliefs,
right.
that we're maybe holding a subconscious belief that this is what I'm going to have in relationships.
Right. So it's normal. It's a normal environment. It's a familiar environment. It is uncomfortable, but we have learned how to survive within an uncomfortable setting. So anything else to us is foreign. Everything else to us is alien.
Right.
Therefore, subconsciously, it's like a network of mind. We like a magnet. We attract those people to ourselves, or we become attracted to those people, right?
And it isn't that that's what we want.
It's not what we want.
It's not that that's what we want.
Yeah.
People, I think, get a little confused about it because they get in unhappy relationships, and now the therapist, namely us, are saying, well, we're attracted to it. But being attracted to it, we're talking about a subconscious attraction.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that's what we want.
Right.
It means that that's what is normal to us.
Mm-hmm.
It means that perhaps we don't know that other things exist, beyond that, so that we may not actually be attracted to somebody who is kinder or more loving. It may not fit for us subconsciously. It may.
Yeah, we call them, for example, he's a sissy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I don't want sissy guy, or or I don't want bossy woman, right? We have seen that. I have had couples here that they came in because of their problems, that they always fight, and we want to get married. And so if they are always fighting and they want to get married, so we need to make sense out of those two, differing combination here. How can you get married when you're always fighting? And then the answer I get is that, well, when we process that, we get to the point that their parents have been the same way. Mm-hmm. They have always argued, but they have been married, and they have been married for a long time.
Right.
So that's how this environment becomes familiar, becomes handleable. It's uncomfortable, but that's all we know how to handle.
Now, the other thing that, as you're talking, I'm thinking, it isn't always a dollar for a dollar.
No, it's not.
Meaning that just because we had parents who showed us one thing doesn't mean that we're automatically going to be attracted to what they showed us.
Right.
It can be that we want the opposite.
Right.
And so sometimes we have people who comply with how they were brought up, and sometimes we have people who rebel against what they were brought up. But if you're rebelling against something, that still may not be the authentic you.
Right.
Because you're taking a particular attitude or behavior that you saw, and then you're saying, I don't want that, I want the opposite.
Right.
And usually the opposite isn't you either.
Right.
It's usually something in between.
Exactly.
Yeah. So people oftentimes, if they're raised in an environment where there's a lot of fighting, then they say, I'm not going to do that. So then they pick somebody that they never fight with. Right. But the fact that they never fight doesn't mean that it's a good relationship.
No,
there may be a lot of hostility underneath, but because you were looking for somebody who wasn't fight with you, things just get swallowed and it never gets resolved.
Yeah, we see that in passive-aggressive behaviors.
Passive-aggressive,
right?
Yeah.
So you say, so what do we do? What do we do is that we need to step back and then look at ourselves and examine our perceptions, examine our beliefs, examine our attitude, examine our behaviors and associated feelings, right?
Mm-hmm.
What makes me get into this thing? And that actually, it's the biggest investment in terms of relationship, or at least one of the biggest investment that a person can make on themselves, to understand themselves about what makes me make choices that they are not healthy to me or they're not desirable to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where therapy comes in, because we're not able to do that for ourselves.
Correct.
We're not able to go to our subconscious and understand what our subconscious is telling us.
Right.
But once we do that and we get to that authentic part of us, to get back to what you explained at the beginning of the program of how we are. Mm-hmm. We are authentic, we are, compassionate, we are curious, we are, sexual, we are honest, all of that. So if we go to and look at ourselves from that perspective within therapy,
mm-hmm.
we can understand how we are actually functioning based on or in accordance of the borrowed ideas, perceptions, and everything that growing up were imposed on us, and we kind of added on top of that our own meanings to it.
Right.
Yeah. Which has formed our false self.
Well, the false self is what we call in therapy the adapted self.
The adapted self.
The adapted self means that because I was raised by parents who may themselves have been injured in their own childhood, parents who weren't emotionally developed as adults. They may still have had a lot of emotional stigmas. In other words, stuck places. That's a better word. So emotional stuck places, which happen when people are traumatized. Often they get emotionally stuck at a certain age, in certain ways, not in all ways, but somebody may be stuck at age 5 or stuck at age 12 or 18 or something. If they have, for different reasons, then they continue to age. They continue to get into relationships. They have children, and they're not able to adequately parent the child without the projection onto the child of negative things. So I think it's important for us to say what projection is.
Right, please.
And projection means that the parent's belief system is something that the parent then projects onto the child as if that's the truth. So if you get a message, let's say, from your father that all women are just very emotional and you can't reason with them during their time of the month, that's a projection. That means that he has that belief about women. Mm-hmm. He's projecting it onto you. You're the child. You're not able to go, well, wait a second, is that true for all women? And what do I do with that information? You take it in
as a fact for all women.
As a fact, and the parent's projection becomes what you take in, which is what we call an introjection. You introject the parent's projection. And that means that you grow up with certain beliefs that were the parent's beliefs, and the parent, because they never examined their beliefs, they put those beliefs onto you, and you take it the way that you take it, and then you act on it, and it's not the authentic true self that's right. acting on it. Right. It's the projections that you got. And of course, people project all the time because they don't say, this is my belief, or this is my understanding, or this is my opinion. They put it out as a fact.
As a fact, yes.
Yeah.
You and I do that sometimes.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Luckily, not too many times.
Well, yeah. But we also, you and I try to catch each other when we do it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. Because you and I that's our job, so we are aware of it. Right. But average people, they're not in therapy, they're not psychologists, so it's not expected for them to be aware of it.
Right.
So that's why we're doing this program. So it's always, a good thing to go back and take a look at ourselves non-judgmentally. Don't say to ourselves, I'm such an, excuse my language, I'm such an idiot that I keep doing the same thing to myself.
Well, now you're talking about self-talk.
Self-talk, yes. Or I could never become successful in relationship, or I could never pick a right date, or I don't have what it takes to date, or I don't have the shape, or I don't have the mentality, or I don't have the intelligence, because people do that,
Right.
See, I'm so naive, I don't know how to date, or I go online, I don't know what to look for, or when somebody calls me, I become so anxious that when I want to go to see them, I'm all sweaty all the time, right?
And actually, to be aware of those things is a good first step.
Yeah.
It's a good first step, but then you don't want to say, I can't learn.
Right.
Because anything that we learn, we can learn something different.
Right.
And that's very important to recognize, is that we can learn things.
Right. So these symptoms and similar that I didn't say right now are actually, these are the excellent data to work with, right? Mm-hmm. What makes you become so anxious that you sweat all the way to your date, right? What makes you so frightened to say what's your truth? Mm-hmm. What makes you put up with anything that your date brings to the table for you, right? So you want to examine yourself as to, what is my background need? What is my subconscious need? Or what is my subconscious belief that makes me put up with all of that? Mm-hmm. So this is a subject that not too many people really pay attention to. And I thought, because I'm seeing the frequency of that, and because of some other messages that I received, I said, you know what? it's pandemic, people are social distancing anyway. So maybe this is a good time to take a look at yourself.
Well, I don't think that there's a bad time.
There is not a bad time, but because right now there is a little bit of a social distancing and people maybe have more time on their hands, maybe it's time to do self-reflection.
Yeah. What we're talking about also is taking responsibility for the way that you see the world.
Right.
See? And it's so easy. And unfortunately, we're going through a time where people, instead of looking at what's going on inside of them, project onto other people and make other people right or wrong or good or bad. And that was not the way our society was supposed to be set up. We were supposed to be set up for freedom of speech, where we could express our opinions and say, this is the way I see it. How do you see it? And then as we started to talk to each other, we could come to some common ground rather than demonizing each other because we didn't see it the same way.
Exactly. So red flags are not always bad, but if they are repeating itself, they deserve to be examined. You deserve to understand yourself before you go on your next date. And I hope you enjoyed this program. We're going to be talking more about this, and I'd like to invite you to join us tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock for another episode about addiction, codependency, and relationship. And I enjoyed this talk, and I hope that you did too. And please visit us at our YouTube. Call us at 951-922-3532. And until tomorrow, don't forget, all you need is love.
All you need is love. Bye-bye.
Have a wonderful afternoon.
Bye-bye.
This is 1490 AM KMET, Banning, Beaumont, Redlands, and Palm Springs. News, talk, sports.
From ABC News, I'm Daria Aldinger. A shelter-in-place order is in effect in Paso Robles, California. ABC's Alex Stone says it's in connection with yesterday's ambush-style attack on the city's police headquarters.
Daria, the manhunt underway right now. Another shooting in San Luis Obispo County, one day after a sheriff's deputy was shot in the face and a homeless man was shot in the back of the head during an ambush on police headquarters in Paso Robles. A large police response is happening once again, responding to the new shots fired. Daria.
The FBI and the ATF assisting state and local authorities on the case. President Trump is pursuing an executive order to encourage police departments to meet current professional standards for the use of force, including de-escalation tactics.
Also, we'll encourage pilot programs that allow social workers to join certain law enforcement officers so that they work together.
The president at a